I'm going to introduce our session participants just by name, and then I'll have them each introduce themselves to you. So next to me is Yasmin El-Ramli, and over in Austin we have Amy Vedder and Carlos Lopez. So we'll start right here, Yasmin, and then we'll head over to Austin.
Thanks, Gail. I'm Yasmin El-Ramli. I'm a Senior Technical Manager with the AICPA. I manage Women's Initiative as well as firm services and internal projects. And before joining the AICPA, I worked for 3 different CPA firms, a Big Four, a national firm, and a local CPA. And thank you so much for having me with you today.
Excellent. We're so glad you're here. Hi, Austin.
Hello. We're very excited to be here from XeroCon Austin. My name is Amy Vedder, and I'm the Chief Relationship Officer for Xero.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carlos Lopez, and I'm the Executive Director and founder of Latino Tax Professionals Association. And we are basically a marketing and consulting firm to help large national companies get their products in front of Latino tax business owners and all of their millions of customers.
Outstanding. So we have a great panel today, and we're going to be talking about the path to an inclusive accounting firm. And so I'd like to start with a question about what that means. What is an inclusive accounting firm?
I'll just start off to talk about why this topic is so important. We talk a lot about women's initiatives throughout this year. I've done an article, a column with CPAPracticeAdvisor on that. And through going to conferences and speaking to a lot of accounting practices and firms, what's really leveled up is a broader topic of not just women, but diversity in total. And we at Xero have sponsored a report called the MOVE Project that was put out today and looked at the issue of diversity and inclusion in accounting practices and where that really stands today. And only 7% in accounting practices right now are non-white. And we know the women's statistics today are, we have over 50% of women graduating from accounting, but only 20% are partners in firms. So what we really need to be thinking about is how do we really turn this around, because in future years, whites are really going to be the minorities. This is going to be a much more diverse culture. And when we talk about the change in accounting practices, we also need to think about how we build these more inclusive practices that are geared toward all the different diversity in clients, but also gearing that toward our employees as well.
Yes, and it's important that we understand how inclusivity can be innovative. For example, how many accountants really think about how they're going to exit their practice? You go to college, you work for somebody for a few years, you start out on your own. So it's easy to build up a practice. It's a lot of work, but it's fun, especially if you have passion for it. But someday you're going to have to exit. Mm-hmm. So what is your exit strategy? So a lot of it has to do with who is our ideal client? How do we grow our practice so that we include all these different minorities and groups into our practice so that we can retire or exit successfully?
I think that's pretty fascinating, and I'm curious, are you talking about big firms or small firms or bookkeeping firms or firms that are predominantly women-owned or minority-owned, or are we talking about everybody?
We're basically talking about everybody. 90% of small businesses where the founder either quits or retires or just gives it up fail. They stop. The legacy no longer continues. So I'm talking about all firms in general where the founder and the CEO needs to set up an exit strategy so the legacy continues.
And I would also just add to that in traditional accounting practices, we have maybe a lot of written programs in place, but we don't necessarily actually test out whether we're really taking action on these, whether the employees are feeling included, whether they feel comfortable in these traditional practices. And one of the reasons Carlos and I met is because he has a Latino tax practice, which really leads to the conversation, where other ethnicities start practices of their own to gear toward different client bases. And that can be women as well, women serving women and so forth. But we need to be thinking about, why do people have to tap out of traditional accounting practices to do that? And how do we make the traditional firm more inclusive so that people can grow their careers either way that they want to do it?
I'll also add that, of course, I agree that inclusion is for everyone, but it's just want to mention that a woman-owned firm or woman-dominated firm is not necessarily more inclusive than any other firms, because it's about having the best talent in leadership position, and it's also about men and women working together for the benefit of the organization and the profession.
Yeah, excellent point. And this year, the Women's Initiatives Executive Committee at the AICPA produced a new CPA firm gender survey. And one of the findings in this survey, I think Yasmin can talk about it in a little bit more detail, was the value that firms discovered when they were inclusive. This was primarily about gender and not minorities, but they definitely discovered value by being more inclusive to genders.
Yes, thank you for that, Gail. And absolutely, the business case for inclusion is definitely, as we mentioned, the need now. It's a business need for firm with aging of the population, with the shortage of talent, with the succession planning bubble. So now it's just something that is no longer a nice thing to do, but it's the right thing to do. It's a business decision for organizations. And as far as the survey, so we just released it last month. We surveyed a few hundred, 500 firms in the summer. And the results were very interesting. First, we confirmed the gender gap at the leadership level, with 22% of women partners in CPA firms today. We also looked into succession planning and noted that very few firms had intentional effort into looking into gender component when building their leadership pipeline. We also looked at various initiatives, modified work arrangement, women's initiative, minority initiative, sponsorship initiative, mentoring, etc. And as Amy mentioned, the number are very low.
Mm-hmm. Before we continue, we need to take a quick break to have a word from our sponsor. So we're going to break away for just a minute, and we'll come back. And when we do, we'll present you with your first CPE code, and then we can continue this discussion.
1 million Zero subscribers are making the world a more beautiful place, no matter where they are, one small business at a time. This one makes the roads a little safer from London to Lima. This one makes mornings easier to swallow in New Zealand with a Kenyan roast. This one helps mums keep up with fashion around the world. App partners like these ones keep the cash flowing. And over 100,000 business advisors like these ones make sure it all adds up no matter where their clients are. Then there's you with your own brand of awesomeness. Nice one. And you've made us better too. Sure, we started with zero, but learning from every one of you makes us smarter, faster, more beautiful. You've paved the way for more businesses to do their thing, connect with each other, and take on the world. Their success is something we can all be proud of. So for helping us hit the big one, thanks a million.
Welcome back, and please check the bottom of your screen for the CPE code, the first code for this session. You need to write that down if you plan to collect CPE credit for this session. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the challenges that firms face if they'd like to make steps toward being inclusive, but they don't necessarily fit a particular model. So what do you think, Carlos can...
Yeah, I can address that issue. Sure. Like, for example, when I first started in this industry, I worked in a small CPA firm, and President Reagan had announced he was going to have an amnesty for field workers. I live in a predominantly agricultural part of California, and I knew there was going to be about 40,000 new taxpayers in our area alone, Spanish-speaking field workers. So I approached the owner of the company and I said, look, we should get into this business. It's going to be huge. It's here. It's permanent. It's going to stay. It's not going anywhere. And he said, well, I don't speak Spanish, and I really don't understand the language or the culture. And besides, what if you leave? And I said, well, that's simple. Make me a partner, and I can stay on. And he goes, no, I'm not really interested in that either. So it was kind of a no-brainer. So I told him, you know what? I need to start my own practice. We're going to part friends. I don't want to do anything dishonest here. And so we did. We're still friends. But it was a point in time where I understood that my place in this industry, and and that happens to a lot of people.
Yeah.
If you don't understand right away what's going on, then you become complacent and you stay in a slot.
Yeah, I had a practice in South Florida, and Carlos's story reminds me, and I think this is a really important step, no matter what you're talking about in accounting practices, but it's really learning to trust and delegate. That you have to have faith in the people that work for you. It's never just going to be you, else there's no succession planning. Mm-hmm. There's no way to move on. And that happened to me having a practice in South Florida, that as I started getting clients in Miami, I had a lot of Latin-speaking clients, and couldn't communicate. I figured out body language a lot of times and could catch things, but I soon learned that either I had to not take the client or hire Latin-speaking staff. Mm-hmm. And that was a real change in leadership style, because I had to trust that they were having the right conversations with the client. And I had to put different review and quality assurance things into my practice so that I could feel comfortable that it was still moving. But if you hire good people and you believe in your people, right, you have a way to not lose someone like Carlos, which is such an asset. And that goes for women as well. I mean, that goes for any, whether it's age, whether it's ethnicity, whether it's being a woman. It's being more aware of the needs of those clients and also of the people that work for you, so that you can put yourself in their shoes as well.
Amy, I have a question. You said that you initially had to put more reviews and quality assurance controls into your business. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So, again, it comes back to communication. Mm-hmm. And really, whether you have Latin-speaking clients or not, you should be communicating with your staff. And I think overall, just when we talk about advisory services or whatever service lines we're in, that's still a skill we need to develop, and how we take time to spend with our staff. So it changes it around. It's important to put what I had in place were project metrics and a project plan, so that I knew certain work was getting done. It wasn't getting done in another language. It was still, in English. The other thing that was really important about this, and especially if you're going to be inclusive in your practice, as well as with clients that are different from you, that you slow down your speech, that you are not condescending when you can't exactly understand their English, when they're trying to speak English as well. And just because it might make you a little bit uncomfortable, that's a learning place for you as a leader, as a manager, to really, change the dynamic. And it only helps you learn better about other cultures and other things that other service lines that you can get into. I mean, think of what that firm lost out in because of your knowledge, in that service line.
To the point that is being made by Amy and Carlos, that it's very important for the firm to have individuals that look like the clients they serve. So we hear more than once. I heard that firms were putting a bidding team to go bid on a project with a firm that was a woman-owned firm with no woman on the bidding team. So there is definitely, an effort, intentional effort, because that's the first a real introduction to the firm is who you have to present the firm to your prospects and clients.
Yeah, excellent point. When firms decide they want to become more inclusive, and whether it's because they want to start attracting more business, or they feel that they're going to be, more well-rounded, or whatever their reasons might be, is this something that can happen organically, or is it more likely that the firm really needs to be intentional about it?
Yeah, and I'd like to address a point that Yasmin just made, is that people do tend to be attracted to people that look like them, speak like them. They feel more comfortable, especially if they come from a foreign country. They feel more comfortable speaking in their own foreign tongue. So it's very important that if you do go out and bid on projects, if you're out going on a referral to get a new client, that you send a person or the people from your firm that will match the potential client that you want to gain. So if you don't have an intentional reason or an intentional hiring practice to hire people that aren't like you, then you're not going to succeed. You're going to be actually diminishing your practice instead of growing your practice.
Yeah, I believe, whether this is the women's issue or diversity in general, you have to proactively be going after this issue in your practice. It's just a stream in your plan, just like anything else would be in a business plan. And there's a couple of ways of thinking about it, and they both have to work together. There's a top-down approach and there's a bottoms-up approach. And when I say top-down approach, is looking around at your leadership team and making sure that you have a diverse leadership team in age, in gender, in ethnicity, because as you bring people in of diverse cultures and diverse thought, they're going to recruit other people like them as well. So there's a piece of that. As you recruit those people in, you have to have, and what is termed in the MOVE project report, affinity groups, where they have people in the firm as well that are like them, that they can talk to, get mentorship from as well, and would understand their different issues with the types of clients they're working with, or maybe their struggles within the firm and how they can overcome that together, and have somebody that will sponsor them in those types of conversations. And I believe it's very important to work between the two. I was at an event a couple weeks ago. It was a tech industry event, and it was a startup company talking about that their leadership team is very intentional, that they targeted to have diverse cultures on their leadership team because they believed that would bring in like employees. And what they've learned from it, so they had a African American group that is in the product engineering side, and that group was saying, we're going to Afrotech next weekend. And the other leaders had no idea what Afrotech was. And so because of that, they were like, go recruit, go bring in more people. But because you had the diversity, you knew there were other places to go to recruit, and you can't just wait for people to come to you.
And I agree that intentional effort is needed because we all have unconscious bias that we bring to the workplace, and that's normal because we're all human beings. Also, we need intentional efforts and a plan to close the gender gap at the leadership level, because women are entering in the profession, but they're not staying, they're not advancing, and also a plan to get more minority in the profession as well.
It also seems that, to Carlos's point, from the beginning when we started talking about succession planning, that if you create a firm that is intentionally inclusive at all levels, and not just, bringing in somebody who can interpret the language, or translate, but bringing in people and making them part of your culture and promoting them up through the firm, that there will be a natural succession that maintains that inclusivity.
Exactly, and that's exactly to my point. As long as you intentionally plan the growth of your firm, and you intentionally plan on hiring people that fit the mold of who you want to go after, who you want to be your client, who you want to work for you, and who you eventually want to be your successor heir, then it has to be an intentional plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to go after who you want. Going back to the comment that you need to look like me kind of thing. Mm-hmm. You can't be surprised people aren't applying to work there if no one looks like them.
Yeah, right.
And especially through the interview process, mm-hmm. People are looking around like, are there other people like me here? How comfortable am I going to be? So if you want to make a change, you've got to find different ways of recruiting and different ways of bringing people into the fold, and giving opportunities to younger staff that can really spearhead their career, where you could be the leader in diversity programs and affinity groups in the practice, so that they're showing leadership ability, but also trying to change the culture, and you're giving the freedom for that change rather than trying to control it, because if you control it, it'll be too hard for it to just work on its own.
Yeah, you want it to be able to work on its own. And like I was saying earlier today, we had an earlier discussion. When we're hiring staff, we mention to them, look, we're a training company. So when you come in here to work for us, we're not going to pay you as much as somebody else who has maybe the same level of experience, but we're going to train you how to be more diverse. We're going to train you how to reach out to various groups so that you can be successful and have a true career path in our firm.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I love that, because I was just going to ask what you meant by perhaps doing different types of recruiting and just changing the process. And I think that by doing something like this, like the training that you describe, it sets your firm out as a different type of firm, and the kind of firm that a more interesting and diverse group is going to want to be a part of. And I think if there are more ways we can speak to recruiting or developing the culture, I love the affinity groups, things that make the firm really warm and inviting and the kind of place where people want to be. I think those are really key issues for firms that want to move in this direction.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it still comes back to trust and delegation. I think that's been a very hard thing for our profession. If we don't do things the exact same way, every single person in the firm is doing it the exact same way, we're not comfortable as partners and owners, and it's not cookie cutter. But the way the world is moving, whether it be technology, the types of clients that are attracted into firms now, you have to trust your people, and you have to start training people from such an early age. Right when they're a staff person, you should be bringing them along and giving them the perspective of what it's like to be a manager, what it's like to be a partner, what kind of conversations happen. And when you start opening that up and giving them that availability, then their thought process starts moving along, and where they think there might be other opportunities, because everybody's got different personal experiences and different people they know, and where they can actually inform the firm. I actually know there's this whole market out there of women-owned businesses, or of agriculture, whatever it is, but you have to open up the thought process to allow that.
Exactly. A little thing I like to say, which I'm sure you've all heard this before, but the CEO and the CFO are having a conversation, and the CEO tells the CFO, well, don't you think we're spending too much money on training? Don't you think we're spending too much time with these new staff members? What if they decide to quit and compete against us? And the CFO tells the CEO, well, what if we don't train them and they stay? And that's something that we have to really be cognizant of. Absolutely.
So, I agree that being an inclusive firm is such a great, powerful short-term benefit, low turnover, but also a long-term benefit with recruiting staff and also clients via internal communication, external communication, newsletters, and promoting low turnover, promoting promotions. And any other milestones for the firm, and celebrating each of their team members with various recognitions. The ICPA has the Women to Watch Awards. You have the CPA Practice Advisor, Most Powerful Women in Accounting. There's and other best firms recognition. So there's no shortage of recognition to celebrate leaders in the profession.
Absolutely. So let's take this up a step and say you are an accounting firm and you define yourself as being inclusive and you want to present yourself as being inclusive to potential clients. How do you go about doing that?
Well, basically, you need to set your profile. What is it you want your company, your firm to profile? Are you going to, for example, specialize in restaurants, or, specialize in gas stations, hotels? So you need to set up, first of all, where you plan on specializing your accounting and your tax preparation. Then after that, you have to delegate the responsibilities. You have to, most importantly, you have to trust your staff to make sure that they're not making mistakes. We hired this Korean fellow 3 years ago because we wanted to attract, there's a large Korean community near our base office. So one of the problems I had was when I heard him speaking in Korean to his clients, let me tell you, my trust was like, whoa, what did I do? Yeah. Have I committed like the worst crime in the world? But then when I saw his work, I saw the quality of his work, when I saw how gracious his clients were to him, and then to me as the owner of the company, I thought, wow, we made a good choice here. Yeah. So it worked out. So that's what you have to do. Like Amy said, it's delegating and it's trusting and it's setting your goals, your profile, what you want to do.
Yeah, Kimberly Ellison Taylor, who's the past chair of the AICPA, she tells a great story about this, and this has definitely been something near and dear to her heart as well. And part of the issue we have is, again, like I said earlier, if someone doesn't see themselves, they don't necessarily apply. But the other thing can be that they've just never had the example of someone in their family being a CPA or an accountant, or any financial profession. And I think from a leadership level, if this is this is a long-term play. You're not going to change this overnight. Oh, yeah. But you need to start being proactive at high schools and colleges and showing what this profession is, what we do. And she has a funny story about going into an more of like an inner city school and doing a fashion show of how do you dress when you're a CPA and an accountant, and what does that look like if you're going into an accounting firm? And that's a really important thing to talk about if you've never had that example. Right. And then, unfortunately in our profession, if someone doesn't look like us when they walk in the door, there's sometimes judgment. So it's important that, we're going out and being proactive in that learning.
And absolutely. In fact, I remember a quote from Kimberly Ellison Taylor, who said that inspiration brings aspiration. So if you inspire people, you let them believe that the sky is the limit and they can be anything they want to be. And I was going to also add that a firm in Florida, they have a very interesting twist on their women's initiative. They invite outside women leaders in their community and marketplace. So it's a great way as well to showcase and be recognized as an inclusive and woman-friendly and a leader in their marketplace.
Nice. Can we discuss some additional benefits of being an inclusive firm, both internally in the firm, working with other accounting firms or other businesses in the community, in terms of relationships with clients? Any examples?
Well, I want to go back to what Amy and Yasmin talked about earlier about recruiting. So I was on a recruiting board for our local high school for a few years. And one of the things that they wanted us to do was go into a classroom where all the seniors were, and then they would separate them into groups so that we could interview them. So what the seniors would do was interview us first. So they would say, well, what do you do, Mr. Lopez? So the first year I was like, well, you know, I'm an accountant and I prepare taxes and, you know, and we hire bookkeepers. And nobody came to my desk after that, see? So I thought, I got to change my approach. So the next time they asked us to come over, and I told them, you know what I do? I am a tax tiger. And what I do is if you're in trouble with the IRS, if you need an audit, if you need something done, ask a tiger to do it for you, and that's what we'll do. Well, almost everybody lined up behind my desk to talk to me.
That's awesome.
So it's the same way we have to look at ourselves as tax tigers, accountant tigers. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we just become boring, we become complacent. And people think we're boring. People think we drive a Volvo. You know, they think we have 2.5 kids and live in a house in the burbs. But, you know, most of us aren't like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would also say, and I'm sure Yasmin has more of the percentages off the top of her head, but all the research out there is when you have the diversity of thought with women, with other cultures, especially at a leadership level, businesses just do better. Yeah. Because the same thought is challenged. So if everybody in the room thinks exactly the same, nothing ever changes. It's not innovative, you're not pushed. And, you know, especially with women, you know, part of the power of what women bring into a leadership team is their nurturing ability, is their ability to listen, is their ability to try to solve for issues that they're hearing around the business that potentially aren't being heard by others in the room. So it's important that you see the benefit of really hearing different perspectives and viewpoints, and also what comes natural to each of those people, because it only makes a better business in the end.
And the ICPA did an article last year around that same time, interviewed 2 women who were working, sharing a full-time position, the 2 of them, and they started the employee benefit plan tax practice for very large firms. And they had 10 people, 9 of them on a reduced schedule. And they managed to triple their practice for this firm while raising large families. I think these 2 women together had about 10 kids. So definitely, you know, there's amazing stories of how inclusive firms can have great client relationship and successful client relationship. Mm-hmm.
Well, we lose so much good talent. Because of when women are in child rearing years and so forth. And, you know, when I had my practice, I really marketed to those women because I knew they still wanted to work, but they needed part-time or flexible schedules. And so I created a way for them to be able to do work. And you've got highly skilled people. And, you know, just using your, you know, example of all the people that come with ideas and are so knowledgeable, and that firm lost that experience, loses so many amazing women because it's not, structured in order to meet the needs of all the different people that make up the fabric of that firm. And so it's important to think about, you know, if you're good to someone during the times that they need it, that they'll never leave you. They're,
Right.
you know, they will be such a huge proponent of that business and always want to do the best because you've been good to their family and them and in their careers. And I think it's important to put that heartfelt piece into this, that you know, people want to care about what they do, not just do what they do. And if you actually are thinking of people as people and not people doing the work, and you know, and finding ways to keep the best talent for what you need, you're going to have a better practice in the end.
That's true. One thing that is also I wanted to bring up too, it's cultural as well, the way we men treat women. In my own life, you know, I grew up with all my grandparents, and my grandfathers, quite honestly, treated like my grandmothers like slaves. They
Yeah.
really did. They were second-class citizens. You know, they'd say, you know, hey, woman, bring me a beer. and my grandmothers would do it. I mean, they'd bring my grandfather a beer, and he'd be sitting there on the front porch, and everybody waiting on him hand and foot. And then, of course, my dad treated my mom not quite as poorly, but certainly not that much better. So you're brought up in that environment. You're brought up thinking, well, that's the way it's supposed to be. Well, I learned very quickly after I got married, that's not the way it is. Women, you are so powerful. You're amazing. You know, you have a job, you raise a family, and then you got to raise that husband of yours. So how in the world do you do it? You guys are awesome. So one thing that we've developed in our practice is allowing that flex schedule. You have to allow it. If you want talent to stay in your firm, it's a must.
We're accountants by nature, and so that means we're very interested in numbers and measuring things and measuring success. So are there ways that a firm that's venturing into this environment of opening its doors, being more inclusive, really building a much more interesting, diverse practice, are there KPIs? Are there ways that we can help them think of it in terms of the numbers? And I know it's probably not the first thing we think they should be thinking of, but it's going to be part of the process.
I think goal setting and working with the staff member is probably the first place to start. You know, asking, well, what are your goals? What would you like to get out of the company? What would you like for me to do to help you out? And really understand where our employee needs to be. And that's probably the most important place to start.
I'm a huge proponent of Net Promoter. And so Net Promoter is a lot of times just associated with customer happiness, but it can be used internally as well of employee happiness. If an employee will refer you to somebody else to say, you should work here because it's awesome, then you know you're doing the right things. And if you're seeing segments of your practice start checking out, or their Net Promoter Score is lower than others, sometimes we don't divide up those Net Promoter Scores by diversity, by gender, it's just one number. We should be diving into that number and making sure that those employees are happy, because if they're happy, they're going to tell their friends that this is a great place to work.
Yeah, we also encourage our firms to go and take a baseline survey. They can take the survey, for example, we just released, and compare themselves to the profession and see where they stand. Are they above or beyond the average trend? So we encourage that. And also, if they have a women's initiative this way, or any type of initiative this way, they can see how much progress or how much impact the initiative is having on the firm. So the AICPA.org/women lead has examples of surveys.
Excellent. And I think the firm gender survey is there as well to be downloaded and taken a look at it. AICPA.org/womenlead. We're going to display on screen the second CPE code for this session right now. So you should see at the bottom of your screen a 3-digit code. You need to write this down. It's the second of 3 codes for this session. And if you're going to collect CPE credit for this session, you'll need to record that. And while we're breaking, let's go ahead and do one more commercial break to learn a little bit more about Xero. And when we come back, we'll give you the third code for this session.
The Partner Program gives you the tools and knowledge to make your practice better. Things like practice software that seamlessly integrates with Xero. You have your own dedicated account manager. We provide marketing support to help you grow your practice. A discount on each client Xero subscription. And the more engaged you are with Xero, the more you get from the Partner Program. And we're here to help. We offer educational support at no cost to help you and your clients. Xero U is our investment in teaching you everything you need to know on your Xero journey. It's not just about the software, it's about teaching you how to be successful in your job using Xero as a tool. Xero TV provides beautiful video for you and your clients to consume bite-sized education. And we have enablement services to help you convert your clients to Xero. With Xero, you can run a beautifully efficient practice with everything you and your clients need in the cloud. Your practice, your clients, one powerful accounting software platform.
Welcome back. We would like to display at this point the third CPE code for this session. So be sure to write this one down too, and at that point you'll have all 3 codes to qualify for CPE credit for this session. So, and then also we'd like to start talking about some takeaways, some things that you can do in your firm if you're interested in making some changes. And one of the things we'd like to discuss is a little bit about how you can have discussions within your firm to start the process of making decisions about where you want to go. And Carlos and Amy, have you got any thoughts on or experiences with how a firm can start down this path?
Yes, I think the first thing that any firm should do, no matter if you're small or large, is sit down with your senior management and set up a succession plan. Because you're really going to have someone to take over for you. And it needs to be well-rounded. It needs to have women. It needs to have other minorities in there. And what I really love to hear is when someone comes up and after they've talked to us and they've been our client for a little while, they'll tell us, it feels like a family when I come in here. Mm-hmm. And that's the environment that we want to have. And that's the succession plan that we want to have, is to have our family continue.
Yep. I would say what's really important, and this goes again to being okay, to trusting and being open and honest, is to set up some groups of younger staff and asking them for their ideas, pull out what they might be encountering, what they think would be, what would help them. And if they don't really want to be the person to speak for it, they could submit it anonymously. You find a Google form or SurveyMonkey or do something that would be anonymous. But rather than it just being online or having a private survey, which can be great as well, I think it's really good when people can come together and have a discussion and maybe have someone facilitate it, even an independent person from the firm that you might hire as a consultant to help you along this journey and be able to take that feedback and bring it into the partnership group so that they know what to do with it. And a lot of times that's the problem, right? Like you get that information and then you're like, well, I don't know where to go from here or what to do. And that's why an independent person can really be helpful. And you shouldn't be afraid of bringing someone in from the outside externally. And that's really what the MOVE project does, because they really keep accounting firms accountable to the programs that they put in place and say that they do. Are they actually doing it? Are their employees actually feeling it? Mm-hmm. And what would be the recommendations to take the next steps to make sure that they can see some traction year over year and that people are happier, and going back and saying, did this work? Or even if you've done those surveys or those committees or task forces, that you come back to a group and say, this is what we heard. These are the 3 things we're going to do this year to try to make an impact on that. And we're open to your feedback as we go along. We're new into this too. And we want to just have an open conversation throughout the year and make sure that we get this right.
And I'll add that we see with our interaction with firms, helping them with Women's Initiative and any other of initiatives, there are really three key factors. The first one is to get a business case for the initiative. Why is that initiative important? Why we should invest time and money and resources. Number two, getting leadership buy-in, very important. And then number three is getting the initiative tied to the strategic plan and the mission of the CPA firm. So it's not just, now it's part of the DNA, and we're just, it's above and beyond. It's not the flavor of the day. We're not doing this because it's a nice thing to do for staff, for women, but it's the right thing to do, again, for the organization.
Yasmin, can you talk to us a little bit about the pilot program that the AICPA has been running? And this is a gender initiative, but it's in its second year, I believe?
Right,
Yeah.
Yes. You're right. So we learn, that those three key components are the starting point for sure. So the foundational elements are very important. And then once you have those three items in place, then you can build. So our three firms are, for example, looking into, they all created a steering committee to help the firm lead this effort. They're also working on drafting a communication plan, because it's very important to communicate and inform every team members why this initiative is important and why it's benefiting everyone in the firm. They've also they're looking into sponsorship, because sponsorship is a very important piece in advancement in CPA firms. So formal sponsorship program. They're looking into the economic model of the modified work arrangement. So they're definitely made a lot of progress.
And the firms that are participating in this program meet how frequently?
On a quarterly basis,
okay.
And then it's it's open discussion. They're able to share experience, best practices, and then we have a live meeting as well on a yearly basis.
And it's a 3-year plan altogether?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So what, as we kind of wind down the session, what issues can we discuss in terms of next steps for firms that are working on providing a more inclusive environment and wanting to be proactive in this area?
Well, my passion is with Latinos and the Spanish-speaking taxpayer. So one of the things that we recommend, highly recommend, is look for a training program that matches who you want to hire. We have several bilingual programs that we've worked on recently, but if you want to get into there's two emerging markets in my opinion, and that would be the Latino market and the millennial market. A lot of people focus on the millennials, well, most certainly as they should, but there's also the Latino millennial, and then there's the Latino business owner. And that is the next market that is taking our country to where it's going to be in the next few years. We're going to be the largest minority here very soon. And I think that if you want to take advantage of that market, you need to start preparing for it today.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would say that, just coming back to, it's important to talk to your people, talk to the women that work there, talk to the different ethnicities that work there, and just be open to a conversation as a first step. This can be a big hurdle. Sometimes as accountants, we don't even ask our clients if they're happy.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
really opening that up to our employees and making it a safe environment for them to do that, where they don't feel like their career will be harmed if they give you honest feedback, if they tell you what their worries are, is really, really important. And I think just as a first step, that at least opens the conversation to give you some, areas that you can say, this year I think we need to attack this area.
Right.
And as a profession, so, we were discussing numbers before. So we have about 75 million or so of baby boomers that are set to retire over the next years. We have 50 million of Gen Xers set to succeed them. So that leaves a 50 million gap. And so it's a tremendous opportunity for women, for minority to fill this void. It's a golden opportunity. But also it's not organization competing with other organization for the talent, it's also the profession competing with other profession that for that same talent. So it's very important as leaders of the profession and the organization to really advocate for diversity and also be championing, sponsoring, mentoring women, and leaders in their organization have to demonstrate that women and minorities can be anything they want to be with hard work and dedication, and women can be owners, entrepreneurs, partners, wives, and mom, and more. The sky is the limit.
Outstanding, excellent. Thank you, everybody, for an excellent session.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Please stay tuned. We're going to be back at the top of the hour with our next session, which is federal income tax update. So we hope to see you all there. And thank you very much, Amy and Carlos from Austin, and Yasmin here in Dallas.
Thank you.